talking points before.
They're not talking points, they're the truth.
But it is hard to take your word for it when this is the most corrupt administration in American history.
Well, that's
we're
your
talking
opinion.
pardons for sale. We're talking about no-bid contracts to those on Trump's family and friends plan. We're talking about a $1.8 billion slush fund. And I think that's corruption. The American people think that's corruption. They want to know if you think that's corruption.
Okay. Number two, this goes right to the point.
Welcome back to Freedom Forge. If you believe in freedom, accountability, and putting American interests first, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of the biggest political battles happening in Washington. Today, we're looking at a heated congressional hearing involving Secretary of State Marco Rubio, questions about U.S. policy toward Venezuela, allegations of corruption, and a dramatic clash over transparency, accountability, and political theater in Congress. The hearing was supposed to focus on U.S. involvement in Venezuela, including questions about oil revenues, contracts, sanctions, and who is influencing American policy toward the Maduro regime. But what unfolded quickly became less about getting answers and more about a political confrontation that left many viewers wondering whether Congress is actually interested in finding facts or simply scoring points for social media clips.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio. Representative Kamala-Gurdove.
So, Mr. Secretary, 5 months ago, you essentially became the new overlord of Venezuela, taking control of the country's oil revenues and giving foreign companies access to its oil and minerals. But you have provided no real transparency about where the money is going and who is benefiting from this arrangement. I want to now talk a little bit about Mauricio Claver-Carrón. So, Mr. Secretary, you've known Mr. Claver-Carrón for many years, correct?
I don't know how many years, but sure.
Okay. We know that he was special envoy to Latin America. He's also a former lobbyist who supported your presidential campaign, I think in 2016. And now he runs a private equity firm that is seeking $1 billion in investments in Latin America. Apparently, he is seen as your right-hand man on Venezuela, but he's not a federal employee, and he's not bound by rules about financial disclosures or conflict of interest. According to the Washington Post, he acts like a kingmaker in Venezuela, helping to determine which private companies get contracts and access. And that's concerning because in January, you gave confidential licenses for Venezuelan oil to a company that had been charged with bribery by the Department of Justice and employs a trader who gave $6 million to Trump's campaign. Some have said that Mauricio is the Jared Kushner of Latin America, but Mauricio has said that Jared Kushner is the Mauricio of the Middle East. So who is Mauricio, and why is he riding on private jets to Caracas with executives from firms trying to get contracts? And why is he texting Delcy Rodriguez on the regular? Who is he working for?
Okay.
I'm gonna allow you to respond. I'm setting this up because it looks unseemly that essentially you are taking Venezuelan oil money and sending it through a network of campaign donors, corrupt politicians, and lobbyists, and we can't get any documentation on that. We don't have any receipts. So the question is anyone from the administration, directly or indirectly, benefiting from the contracts being doled out in Venezuela?
Is this where I get to answer?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Number one is the number of people. Mauricio is one of many people that are involved in what's happening in Venezuela. There's not a day that goes by that we don't have someone who's interested in what's happening in Venezuela for a variety of reasons. Nor is he the only person in the United States that directly contacts Delcy Rodriguez and others. There is a stampede of people that want to be involved in Venezuela. Mauricio is one of many, but by the way, not involved in Venezuela. I am not knowledgeable or know of any financial links he has to anybody in Venezuela.
So I'm going to reclaim my time, Mr. Secretary,
Well,
but I'm glad that you said that. Because you have said these things, you have shared these talking points before.
They're not talking points, they're the truth.
But it is hard to take your word for it when this is the most corrupt administration in American history.
Well, that's
we're
your
talking
opinion.
pardons for sale, we're talking about no-bid contracts to those on Trump's family and friends plan, we're talking about a $1.8 billion slush fund. And I think that's corruption. The American people think that's corruption. They want to know if you think that's corruption.
Okay. Number two, this goes right to the point of transparency. You're absolutely wrong about the way the money flows. It's pretty straightforward, and I'll share.
So I'm going to have to reclaim
So
my
when-
time again because
well, then,
the
what kind
question
of
about
process is this? They get to ask questions and you don't get to answer?
It's my time. The question
I don't know
about
about you. When
corruption
is it my
really
time?
important.
So why am I
because
here if I don't
you
get to answer
can't
your
call
questions
out-
or your defamatory statements?
Reclaiming my time,
Reclaim.
Mr.
I want
Chair.
you to, but I want to reclaim. Well, do I get time?
This
Because you
is
make
my
these
time,
defamatory
Mr. Chair.
statements and no one can talk here.
If
This
you
is crazy.
can't call out corruption in this country, then how can you call it out in another
Well, I can't say
country?
anything 'cause you
That
won't
is
let me
the
speak.
question. It is about credibility and your credibility. And your credibility meter is on empty right now. This
See,
oil.
these guys
who
just get to talk and I don't get to answer?
Who determines the barrels of oil that get sold?
Why-
How
but you
many
won't
of
let
them?
me
At
answer your
what
question. I
price
have an
does it
answer
get
for your
sold?
question.
Where is it going?
Oh, I get it.
will
They
let
have to
you.
use their time for me to answer
The
your
onus
question.
is on you to
a
prove
joke.
that there is no corruption happening.
Well, how do I
That is
prove it if
your
you don't let me talk?
responsibility as the Secretary of State. And you know what? Normally we would have access to that data. That's the
You do. You
transparency.
just don't know where
but
to
you're
look.
not showing us any receipt. Well, then show us.
But
do
you
you
won't.
commit? Do you commit to coming back here with whoever the person is who is monitoring the sales of the oil? Bring them before this committee.
Can I
show the
reclaim my
receipts.
time?
Have the documentation. You don't have this time yet. I am talking about your credibility and evidence, not your talking points, because talking points are never a replacement for transparency
I agree,
and
but that's what you're
documentation.
saying. You're saying talking
And
points
we
without
have
an
not-
answer.
We are 5 months into this and no audits. Zero visibility into the
100%
contracts that are
false.
awarded.
100%
Zero
false.
Unfortunately,
transparency about where the
Representative's
money
time has
is
expired.
going.
Representative Salazar is recognized.
And giving contracts with no transparency
Can I
is
borrow your
exactly
time
the
to
reason
answer?
why you shut down USAID. So practice what you preach. I yield my
Oh,
time.
she gets to scream now too? Scream
Chairman,
and
can we
shout.
take down her words?
I'll give you some time. I'll give
Yeah.
you some of my time. Let me just
Okay.
just
But God,
change
what
the
kind of thing
energy.
is this? What is this? You get asked questions for 5 minutes and you don't get time to answer. It's not a hearing.
I think you said clown
Like
show
a dunk
before.
tank.
I
What
don't,
is
I don't
this?
have to tell you. I don't. I'll
I've
give
even
you
used
ti-
their time. How can I answer the question? They don't even give me time. I've had to use their time to answer your questions.
Yes.
All right, whatever.
All right, so I don't need to tell you that in my community, the city that I represent, the city of Miami, you're one of the most illustrious representatives, and that we're very proud of you, not only the Cuban Americans, but the Hispanic Americans in my
Why is she
community.
leaving? I'm
So
going to answer her questions.
I will.
Oh, she's going. Okay, I got it. Well, thank you for coming.
All right, so we're going to talk about, I just want to give you time to answer and then talk about Venezuela and talk about Cuba. So let's go back to Venezuela. Let's start with that. You said that stabilization, recovery, and transition. Those are the three steps that the State Department was going to implement in Venezuela. I believe that transition is the free and fair elections. The Venezuelan has a very robust opposition forces. We have Maria Corina Machado. So
Right from the beginning, Representative Kuhn-Lagarde launched into a series of accusations. He claimed that the administration had effectively become the new overseer of Venezuelan oil revenues and suggested that contracts and business opportunities were being handed out through a network of political allies, lobbyists, and donors. He repeatedly referenced Mauricio Claver Carrón, a longtime Latin America policy expert and former administration official, implying that he was exercising enormous influence behind the scenes. Now, let's be clear about something. When elected officials raise questions about transparency, that's part of their job. Congress absolutely has a responsibility to investigate government actions. No one should be above scrutiny, whether they serve in a Republican administration or a Democrat administration. But there's a huge difference between asking tough questions and making accusations as though guilt has already been established. Throughout this exchange, the congressman repeatedly suggested corruption, conflicts of interest, and improper financial arrangements. Yet what was striking was that every time Secretary Rubio attempted to answer, he was interrupted or cut off. Think about that for a moment. If your goal is to discover the truth, wouldn't you want to hear the response? If you're making serious allegations involving billions of dollars, contracts, campaign donors, and foreign governments, shouldn't the accused official at least be given the opportunity to explain the facts? Instead, what viewers witnessed was a pattern that has become increasingly common in congressional hearings. A member delivers a lengthy statement packed with accusations, then immediately reclaims their time the moment the witness begins responding. At one point, Rubio became visibly frustrated and asked a question that many Americans watching at home were probably asking themselves. Why am I here if I don't get to answer your questions? Honestly, that's a fair question. A hearing is supposed to be a fact-finding exercise. It's supposed to be a process where lawmakers ask questions and witnesses provide answers. If witnesses are never permitted to answer, then what exactly is being accomplished? The most revealing moment came when Rubio attempted to explain how the money flow process actually works. He said the congressman was wrong about how funds were being handled and offered to explain the process. But before he could finish, he was interrupted again. The congressman insisted that Rubio's credibility was in question and argued that the administration had failed to provide sufficient transparency. Rubio tried repeatedly to respond, but each time the exchange devolved into arguments over procedure rather than substance. As a conservative and as someone who believes in accountability, I think transparency matters. If there are questions about contracts, oil sales, licensing agreements, or financial arrangements involving Venezuela, then those questions should be answered. But transparency cuts both ways. If you're going to accuse someone of corruption, you should also allow them the opportunity to present evidence in their defense. Otherwise, it begins to look less like oversight and more like a public relations stunt. What's particularly interesting is how this exchange reflects a larger problem in Washington. Far too often, hearings are no longer designed to inform the public. They're designed to generate viral clips. Politicians know that a dramatic confrontation will spread across social media faster than a detailed discussion of policy. They know that outrage generates headlines. But the American people deserve more than theatrical performances. They deserve actual answers. Now let's talk about Venezuela itself, because that's the issue that should be getting the most attention. Venezuela remains one of the most tragic examples of socialist failure in the modern world. The country possesses some of the largest oil reserves on the planet. It should be one of the wealthiest nations in Latin America. Instead, decades of socialist policies, government corruption, economic mismanagement, and authoritarian rule have devastated the country. Millions of Venezuelans have fled. Inflation has destroyed savings. Political opponents have been persecuted. Elections have been questioned. Basic freedoms have been undermined. For years, the United States has struggled with how to respond. Should America isolate the Maduro regime? Should sanctions be expanded? Should opposition leaders be supported? Should American companies have access to Venezuelan resources? These are complex questions with serious consequences. What I found fascinating was what happened immediately after the heated exchange. Representative Maria Salazar stepped in and gave Rubio time to actually answer. Imagine that. A hearing where a witness is allowed to respond. She shifted the conversation toward the future of Venezuela and focused on what many conservatives view as the central issue: democratic transition. She referenced stabilization, recovery, and transition as key goals and highlighted the importance of free and fair elections. That is where the discussion should be. The real question isn't whether politicians can score points against each other. The real question is how the United States can support freedom and democracy in a country that has suffered under authoritarian rule. Conservatives have long argued that America's foreign policy should be guided by strategic interests while supporting democratic values. That doesn't mean nation building. That doesn't mean endless intervention. But it does mean standing against dictatorships that oppress their own people. When it comes to Venezuela, many Americans have deep concerns about the Maduro regime and its ties to anti-American governments around the world. Those concerns are legitimate. At the same time, Americans deserve transparency from their own government. We should know how policies are being implemented. We should know how contracts are awarded. We should know how taxpayer interests are being protected. Those questions are fair. But those answers can only emerge through serious investigation, evidence, and honest debate, not through shouting matches where one side talks and the other side is prevented from responding. The most memorable moment of this hearing may not have been any allegation about Venezuela. It may have been Rubio's frustration when he pointed out the obvious flaw in the process. If hearings become places where accusations are made but answers are forbidden, then Congress risks losing credibility with the American people. Americans are tired of political theater. They're tired of politicians talking past each other. They're tired of clips designed for social media rather than solutions designed for the country. Whether you support Rubio or oppose him, whether you're Republican or Democrat, one principle should unite everyone. If a question is important enough to ask, then the answer is important enough to hear. That's how accountability works. That's how transparency works. And that's how democracy is supposed to work. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Was Representative Kumlagardev asking legitimate questions that deserved answers? Or was this simply another example of political grandstanding? And do you think Secretary Rubio was treated fairly during this exchange? If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Freedom Forge, and share this with friends and family who care about truth, accountability, and the future of American leadership. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.